Amur Minerals, the nickel resource development company targeting the far east of Russia, has had a good start to 2016 with several upgrades to its Kunmaniye resource. Robin Young is Chief Executive. He joins us now. Robin, welcome.
Thank you, Jeremy.
When we spoke, I think back in September last year, you were looking to go into the winter as a fairly happy man, because I know you'd had a pretty good 2015, and here you are now straight out of the blocks of 2016 with these resource upgrades. How are things going?
It's really going very well. We have released 2 resource updates on 2 of our deposits. We will be releasing a 3rd update on the Kubuk deposit as well. What we have found is that the new models that are being generated are allowing us to take a very hard look at mining higher grades using underground production methods, especially in the right locations. Some of it's best mined by open pit, some of it's best mined by underground. So we can optimize the profitability based on selecting the right method for the right location. One of the excellent factors that we have now is that over 66% of our resource falls within the measured and indicated category, which means we can use it to generate reserve statements. And those reserve statements are going to be based on about 160 million tons of resource. So we're looking at taking advantage of the fact that we're now probably among the top 18 projects in the world when it comes to nickel sulfide production, and we're looking forward to developing the numbers all the way through a DFS.
That takes you up from what we were last talking about. I think you were about 20th, I think, in the league at that point. So you've moved up, and you see the potential to move up again?
Yes, but we're not targeting that right now. What we're really focusing on is the DFS. What we want is a reserve statement that would cover the 5 years of say a typical loan structured payment for funding the project, plus several years of production after that. So we are looking now at converting more towards a company that plans on being in production, and with the assistance of the Russian Far East Development Fund, which has been key in providing additional information to us on the infrastructure, including the road and additional power lines.
I want to take a look into more detail at the funding and where you go in the infrastructure in just a minute, but going back to the DFS, when is that scheduled? What have you got to do before that kicks in, and how long does it take?
Actually, the first step is happening right now, and this is the resource update itself. A mining operation is only as good as the resource/reserve that comes out of the analysis. So once we have the Kubuk results released, we'll be immediately moving on to reserve development. Once we have the reserve mine plan, we'll be able to identify these specific metallurgical samples for designing the process, the flow sheet, and all the related operating costs that come along with the operation itself.
So will this give the investor a full economic model for the entire project? Is that the plan?
Yes, ultimately with the DFS you have to have the economic model and the appropriate NPVs to cover the funding of the project. At this point in time we're estimating somewhere around the potential of 800 million for a capital investment. We're looking at a payback on that in that loan structure of about 5 years. And so what we're seeing with the resources and the reserves we have now, the scheduled mine plans, the equipment purchases, the plant construction, the road construction, those will all be brought together in a project management system with timings and the actual numbers themselves, which lead to the issuance of a final NPV on the project.
And do you have a queue of people, not necessarily wanting to lend you money, but do you have a queue of people you can go to get this funding? Because I know last time we spoke about the Baikal Development Fund, which is a local funded bank which gives you potentially the possibility to borrow money. Is that most likely they're going to be the source of this?
That will be one of our prime sources, especially when it comes to the relationship with building the road and the power itself. Those are key aspects which the Russian government is pushing very hard to develop the region. The other sources of funding would be typical financial institutions. In fact, what we are going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is preparing for a presentation with the Far East Development Fund in Moscow, where we're beginning to contact specific agencies. In this case, the meetings will be held with the Korean financial institutions that want to also participate in the development of the region.
And amongst some of the questions presumably that investors will be asking you about the economics of all this is to whether or not you contract out the final product to be made into what the end user is going to use, or you do that yourself. Do you buy a furnace or do you not? The arguments there, I guess, are going to be mostly about money.
Correct, yes. It's a trade-off study where you can actually calculate the NPV difference. What we do find is if we do sell the concentrate on a toll basis, we lose about 50% of the contained metal value that's kept as a fee. It's a brutal payment for us, and as a result what we can see, and we have identified preliminary numbers now through Outotec out of Finland, that for us to build our own furnace is only about $150 million US, as opposed to losing maybe as much as $2 to $4 billion worth of revenues that a toll smelter would take. So obviously, very high on our list is metallurgical work that we can prove that we can build our own furnace along a rail siding where we can have access to coal and limestone, which will be a part of the feed that would go into the furnace itself.
Whichever way you cut, the cost of doing this is you've got to have a road in, you've got to have power, you've got to have all of those things. You talk about the rail and so forth. Who's going to pay for all that? Who's going to contribute to all that? Who's going to make sure it all works?
The Far East Development Fund will be a key, what they call are calling a PPP, a private-public group partnership. And as we're working with that partnership, we will be negotiating with them some of the funding for the road itself, as well as for the power line. So we have the backing of the Russian and the state agencies and governments through various tax incentives as well. As for the mine site facilities, the equipment, the plant, the tailings impoundment area, dormitories, everything that we need to do, those will be financed through working with institutions, financial institutions that typically fund projects such as ours. And of course, you can consider companies like BNP Paribas, as well as Standard Bank, the typical companies that fund these types of projects. There is also the availability of access of funds through working with companies or institutions such as the EBRD and the IFC as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy when you're looking at these big mining projects to talk about millions and billions, but when you look at the share price, the value of the company, 30-odd million pounds at the moment, there's been a big exit for investors in the mining sector, and obviously been taken down as a result of that. But with the project as far developed as it is and the plans that you've got, what do you say to investors about this? I mean, how do you reconcile the market capitalization against one, the potential, but two, the amount of money that's having to be spent here?
Well, I consider at this point in time that we are an undervalued stock in the market today. If you just take a look at the contained metal value as of this morning, what we're seeing is that at an estimated value of 1% of the metal in the ground, we should have a market cap somewhere in the order of 58 million pounds.
And that's just 1% of the total resource that you've got?
That's correct. Right. So as far as I'm concerned, we are an opportunity for investment. As for moving forward, what I'd like to also see is that we will slowly begin to accrete value to the shares, and this will be done by the releases of the ongoing information, and also the fact that we are going to be drilling again this year up to 15,000 meters to expand the resource and to also develop the final plans for the Molly-Kroomkon-Flangovi area, which looks to be our prime target in our startup location.
And of course, the end point has to be the demand that comes through.
What we're seeing right now is it was about 4 months ago, 3-4 months ago, the nickel market started to turn. And we've seen it go from about $3.75 a pound up to about $4.25 today. This is a significant improvement. The $8,800 a ton nickel price is a new price that we've adjusted to for our development of the DFS itself. And what that is identifying is that we need high grades, and this is the success that we've shown over the last few weeks in the release of the information, that we're seeing a substantial improvement and the ability to identify high-grade zones that are running in excess of 0.8% nickel.
Yeah, okay, clearly demand's there. Let's just wrap it up and take a look at what you've got planned for this year. I know you've just spent, what, $2.5 million on a new drill rig, 2 bulldozers and an excavator for the Comurnia site. So clearly you've got a lot of plans for this year. What is it looking like so far as you're concerned in terms of the demands on your time?
What we're looking at right now is it was a kind winter to us. We didn't have nearly as much snow. We're going to probably be starting drilling earlier than normal. We usually start around June 1. That drill program, we're going to dedicate about half of 15,000 meters to resource infill drilling as well as resource expansion. The other half is going to be drilling out a large-scale bulk metallurgical sample that we'll use to identify the final plant design and the design of the furnace itself. So we're looking at having a very active year in the field. We have crews on the site right now that are assessing the water and the water potential for the plant. We're also working on the DFS side of things where we're generating all the study work that we need, and this will include the environmental, all the infrastructure development, and the on-site facilities that we need to mine about 6 million tons a year.
Good. Okay. Well, good luck with all that, and thanks indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
That's Robin Young. He is the Chief Executive of Amur Minerals.